Welcome to Mic'd Up with Angela Ahrendts in conversation with Lucy Parker.
At Brunswick, we aim to work with some of the most exciting companies in the world that are finding their leadership in terms of financial value hand in hand with social value. We all know that big companies have to deliver shareholder value. But there is a new paradigm coming through, which is companies which are choosing to do that hand in hand with delivering value to society at large, and there are very few companies which are doing that so visibly and with such commitment and imagination in the world today as Apple is. So it's a particular excitement for me to be sitting beside Angela. I've known this lady for a while, and she needs very little introduction. Having actually turned Burberry into a global fashion brand, propelled it onto a global stage. She was, unsurprisingly, hunted down by Tim Cook, and now she's propelling Apple Retail into a new gear completely. So I think for me, the opportunity here is to find out what's really front of mind for Angela. Now, I know that you've come pretty much straight off the plane from Dubai to visit us here with some smash successes in the last week behind you in Dubai. But I also know that there's a moment today, so we'll get back to Dubai in a minute and we'll stay with this moment. This is 3 years to the day, I'm told, that you joined Apple. So, wow, there is a journey and a half in those 3 years. And from the new girl 3 years ago to the day, to the big smash successes of Dubai last week, it's been an amazing time. How's it been? How would you say it's been?
Well, you said amazing, so it's been a journey. It's been, it's funny. People will say, "Has it been fun? Has it been?" And so it makes you really stop and think. And I think I told one gentleman about a week or so ago. I said it's kind of like raising your children. At times it's the most frustrating, most challenging, but yet the most gratifying and fulfilling thing that you'll ever do in your life. So it is. In part because it is such an incredible company, and the retail part has been so incredibly successful. So, how do you come in and how do you come into a tech company, at my age and create an entirely new vision that's been so incredibly successful for the last 15 years. And so I think that's when I say it's been a journey because, other than leadership or culture or brand, I didn't really speak the same language at all. I'm not an engineer. I told Tim I am not a techie. But I think that we've kind of figured out a way to communicate with the 63,000 that we have in all of the 500 stores around the world, nearly 500, and also a way to communicate with the center. And by the center, I mean, one Apple, because there's, it's been the company has, is so huge. And I mean, every company is a Fortune 100 company in itself, right? So, but yet retail is where the best of Apple comes together. And so we kind of figured out a way to talk their language. And I started early on saying that, this is the smallest product that we produce, and just picture the store as the biggest product that we produced. And as long as I talk about it in terms of hardware, software, services, then I think we've been able to get everybody in the center and the teams around the world aligned.
And when you talk about hardware, you really mean kind of the architecture and the stores themselves.
Absolutely.
Are becoming. Say a bit about that. They are the hardware for you, are they? Into which the experience goes. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, and again, just to get everybody united, because the tenure in retail and the tenure in the center, everybody's been here for so long, and I didn't speak their language, right? I mean, I had a retail language, but they don't speak retail language. I mean, they speak tech language. And so I talked about the design of the stores, the hardware. And when we actually launched the new store design concept about a year ago, actually May 15th last year, Union Square was a bit of a pilot because that was already halfway and we caught it. But when we talked about the hardware, and then we talked about it as if it were a launch, and the 5 new features that we were launching in this new store design, and what we wanted the hardware to do, et cetera. And then very gradually got onto the software, et cetera. But if I talked their language, like I said, features, et cetera, then it's and I guess simplicity is a virtue at Apple as well. So it taught me that.
And Dubai, that sounded like a real flagship moment for Apple Retail. So what was such a big deal about it?
yes, Dubai, but I think that what we've been doing is we've been working for the last 3 years. Again, this product took 3 years to produce. This product takes 2 years before, a new one comes out, and it's no different when you're building a gigantic product. The cycle, this has been, actually since the first 5 years since they actually decided they wanted the space, but then 3 years since from when I started. So it's kind of Dubai, it's less Dubai. The reason that we kind of made a bigger deal out of it was it is actually the first that fully represents the new strategy for hardware and software and all of the services that we're unlocking. We happen to do it in Dubai. This is, again, Union Square was a bit of a pilot. Regent Street reopened in London, a bit of a pilot. This is the first one that is actually the new product and the whole new vision of what we'll be rolling out around the world. And you will see one of these a quarter now for hopefully the next 5 years. But it's a combination, and there happens to be an image of it. But think of these not as stores, because we took the word store out of our vernacular. I took it out 2 years ago because these are such huge investments that Apple is making. And this, 80 million people walk into this Dubai mall, and it's right in front of this huge fountain and visible to the Burj Khalifa. And so the impact that this has on Apple for the entire geo is what is important. Again, Apple is so huge. Retail is only 0.2% of the company's distribution and about 15% of their sales. So
seems extraordinary because the splash that Apple Retail makes is much bigger than its proportion within the company.
Absolutely. So therefore, what role does it have to play for Apple to make an impact? But by the same token, what role then did we want it to play in the community?
And so, just to stop for a second on the flagship quality of the place itself, the architecture, the visibility of it inside Dubai, you were actually making something. When you say this phrase you use about it, represents that reaches the whole geo, you mean it's a flagship, sort of almost on a global stage. Is that what you're really saying when
Absolutely.
you say that?
Absolutely.
And at the same time, it's a sort of meeting place in the community. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we made a fairly big announcement about Dubai and again the whole architecture of the store and the solar screens out front, and this 186-foot balcony that is community space. Again, because we also run the online business, so we can tell you every trend of what's happening online, and then and we know that these spaces have to do something that you can't do online. And so 3 years in the making, what we had decided the first year. And we did this with all of the team members and Foster and Partners out of London, and we decided that again, these were Apple investments, but they needed to be investments we were making for the community, and then what was the role that we wanted them to play in the community. So this happens to be a picture of the balcony, and if you've been to Union Square,
amazing.
There's a plaza out back at Union Square that Apple doesn't own. It's a beautiful piece of real estate that was horrible, and we renovated it, put in a green wall with a fountain, seating, beautiful, and we still don't own the space. It's community space with free Wi-Fi 24/7, et cetera. And so in these big places that we're building, again, what is the role? And we envision, and so Dubai is very much the same. We built a 186-foot curved balcony for the public to view the fountains. It's the number one, most photographed place in all of Dubai, and that's kind of our gift to the community, because we've said we want these spaces to be like town squares. We want them to be gathering places where everyone's welcome. The glass is huge. Everything's transparent. The way the doors pivot and open itself up into the community. It's funny because living in New York and living in London and having 3 teens and teens don't want to go to a mall today. They can get everything they want, however they want, faster, et cetera. And so it was actually interesting because in New York, why did the kids want to go to Central Park? Why did they want to go to Washington Square Park? Why did they want to go to Covent Garden in London? There's always something going on. And it's human to human. There's always a kid playing a guitar. There's somebody sketching. There's photographers, right? There's always something going on. And, it's actually not a coincidence that today that going on just happens to be the same thing, but right here. 1.5 billion people see this every single day. And on an unaided basis, you've got like a 95% recognition rate. So I say this is actually the language that the next generation speaks. So all we did was take the 4 most important things they do on this and drop them down.
What does that mean? What does that actually mean you're doing in those spaces?
So this is the #1 camera in the world times 10. There are more photos taken, more film shot, more videos edited, et cetera. So stay on photography for a second. So we took, just, you could take photo camera, we took that and dropped it down into what we call the avenues, which, you know, if you typically have a town square, you have little shops around the square, each one representing something different. So just drop photography down, but it's more than that. Because who's going to teach the next generation how to be a better photographer, how to edit their videos, and at different levels, all the way up to a pro. So we actually had to reorg the team as well, and we announced a position called a creative pro. You know, we've always had the geniuses, but the creative pro is to liberal arts what the genius is to technology. So we took these 4 passions, dropped them down into the avenue, announced 4 creative pros in every single store that have at least 10 years of expertise in that passion, understanding those apps, etc. And then we announced what's called Today at Apple, which is the software in the store, the entire store experience, and the fact that these 4 creative pros now would begin to teach 60 sessions a week.
Those 4 people.
Those, well, and there's the 4 passions, and you could say there's a couple of photography, a couple to handle all the shifts, etc. But they will now begin. So the guy the creative pro for the App Store came down. He will now begin to teach coding. You know, Swift is the platform that Apple is on. He'll start teaching the first module of Swift. It's a curriculum. Kids will come in on Saturday morning instead of watching cartoons and learn how to code, but there's actually a curriculum, you know, 3 different times a day, 7 days a week, that anybody can come in, because maybe the onus is on Apple to help the next generation of iOS app developers.
So if I've got it right, and I think you've told me the 4 passions, photography is one, music is another, filming is another.
Well, that goes with photography.
That goes with photography.
Yeah.
So what are the 4 then?
Music, photography, and we took one from the iPad, art and creativity.
Oh, great.
Drops down, and music, photography,
and the technology, the iOS
and the App Store.
So basically, what I'm hearing is that Today at Apple has anybody in that community, in whichever community you're in, can actually come in and learn whether they're beginners or whether they're quite experienced, the next level up, because you've put people in the stores to actually teach them. And that began with Dubai last week, but it's going to go further, isn't it? Is it going to roll out?
Yeah, we've been piloting it, like I said, in a handful of stores, and it's not even, it's for customers. Let me back up, because it's also so we said we wanted to create this town square, and what was the bigger purpose? What was the role we wanted it to play in the community? Great. So it is for customers at all levels, to your point, but it's also for entrepreneurs. Who helps the little guy? Who helps? 95% of every community is comprised of small and medium businesses. 95%, and they employ less than 10 people. So these big flagships, also one of the 5 features is a boardroom. And the boardroom is for all of the local entrepreneurs to come in and use. And again, our team will help them keep up to speed with technology. There's sessions called business circuits and business sessions, but it's also for educators. So, you know, I said very early on when I started was traveling all over the world, hitting the different stores, and I would tell our store teams, based on the amount of traffic that come into our stores and the amount of revenue that we do in these stores, I would tell the store leaders, and there's not one, there's like 5 or 6 store leaders for every store, and I would tell them, you're the mayor of your community. Like, you have to look at it that way, based on the number of people you employ and the revenue, et cetera. So therefore, do you know every school within 5 miles from you? Do you know every major small business entrepreneur that's up and coming in and you know, as well as knowing your customer base, et cetera. So this is where we set the stage for all of this. We've been working for the 3 years. So yes, we did launch. Again, it's called Today at Apple. It's the software in Dubai. So that was only the 4th store. So at the end of this month, yes, we are overnight going to transform about 419 other stores
Wow.
in one night, so that every one of them will become what I call a continuous learning center, and will launch. It's actually we did a mock-up with 3 stores to see how long it would take, and the manpower, et cetera. So we could, everything at Apple has to be down to a science.
Yeah.
And so we are very comfortable that at the end of this month we will flip those stores in one night. They will have their avenues, they will have their demo products, their creative pros will step in. Today at Apple will launch. And the whole world will be welcome, and we've eliminated anything. You don't pay for these programs anymore. We used to charge, for some of these things, and everything is free, and it's a very formal curriculum, and that's really the unlocking of Today at Apple.
And that's a huge investment. That's a very big thing for you to do. And it sounds to me as if the thinking that you were doing is very deep about what you feel your role is in the community, what you feel Apple can be in a community. Mm-hmm. What is that? Can you describe that and why it matters, your role in communities where you operate?
Yeah, we did a lot of reading and a lot of feeling and studying, et cetera. And, I don't, and if it hasn't been reinforced at this conference, I mean, what automation is going to do, and and the fact that isolation happens to be the #1 disease in the world today, and so I think that anything that we do, what were we trying to solve for?
Yeah.
And so we wanted to create these community town squares where everyone is welcome. The best of Apple comes together, but it gives everyone a place to go. Mm-hmm. So if you just need a human connection. And it's funny, for those of you who know John Gruber, he in Daring Fireball, he's in the Valley, and he got Today at Apple. And I love this quote that he talked about last week. This human connection where people have interactions with real people. I mean, in real life, No, but I mean, it's fascinating, right? Because everything has gotten so device oriented. So we felt we needed to create a place where people could come and connect with each other, learn, et cetera. But it's also not a secret that the arts have all been obliterated from education. And as automation comes in and disrupts a third of the workforce over the next couple of years, we actually believe leaning back into the arts at this point in time, which is what our customers use our products for. It's what they trust us to teach them. That's also why photography, why art and creativity, because we think those are going to be the great offsets for automation in the future.
And it's a huge investment in those communities. Mm-hmm. It's good business too, isn't it? In what way does it help the business as well?
Yeah, again, and I don't think that Apple's different, but when you have the share, in of your products in people's lives, and we know that they only use 10% of what these are capable of doing.
Yeah, put my hand up. That's definitely true of me.
And so, we always say that we want to build a lifelong relationship with them, and it's in Apple's DNA anyway. For those of you who ever had any trouble with your devices, 60% of our headcount in the stores is spent on service, not on selling, on servicing. And it was really interesting because 40 million people last year went to the Genius Bar.
Wow.
But half of those were with how-to questions on photography, on Apple Music, right, on iTunes, on the App Store. 20 million people had questions wanting to learn how to do things better. So that's also what kind of, they're already coming in for it. If we can help them use their products better, they'll be lifelong customers. I mean,
yes.
Isn't that what you want in any great relationship?
And one of the things I think is really marvelous about hearing you talk about it in quite that way, certainly my experience in working with businesses who are sort of struggling, how do we deliver social value, is that so often it's thought of as a trade-off, an instead of financial value, or if we just put a pause on that for a minute, we can do the other. But you're talking about a symbiotic relationship where what's good for the business is also good for the world around you that you're trying to influence, and actually that's in itself the values in action in the business. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a box you tick. It's a part, like I said, our teams are hired for their empathy. for their compassion. I mean, they are there to serve every customer. So it's always been a part of Apple's DNA. And so I would argue that it's actually built into our operating model. All we've done is try to just evolve it, turn it up, so that it has an even bigger impact on Apple,
yes,
but then embeds itself even deeper into the community. And honestly, I think the onus is on Apple to do this, but I think the onus is on every company to do it. I think that again, I fear for my kids. You fear what's going to happen in the next couple of years, and I think if every company were to lean in and almost reskill, if you will, in their competencies and things that are, wouldn't we all be able to get where we want to get to faster?
And one of the things that I find really exciting in listening to you talk about the emphasis on community with a sort of new paradigm almost and a huge ambition for it is that it feels very aligned with the way Apple has been thinking of itself in wider society for some years now. And I've been lucky enough, privileged enough to work alongside you and the team for a while on it. And it's very clear that when you, and spearheaded by Lisa Jackson and others in the company, moved into environmental responsibility, it was with a sense of ambition, with a sense of redefining what was possible, and almost challenging others to follow too, because you were definitely setting a new high bar for yourselves and for the sector at large. I would say you pretty much repeated that pattern in the supply chain. The feeling of, okay, let's take on board the challenge, the thing that could be a threat and a danger, set the bar high and see if we can set the bar for others. And now I'm hearing you talk about the same again in community, and I'm thinking you're using the word human responsibility, human impact. Is this really the next chapter in the way Apple's thinking about itself and its wider responsibilities?
We're learning right now. I mean, so we actually have started to measure. We've started to, how many lives we've touched, how many people we're connecting. We've just now internally started to, and we're meeting with some great minds in terms of, how do you measure, how do you, so, and I think to your point, we're being fairly daring and bold in terms of putting some things out there. But I think it would be incredible if someday we were able to. I think that, like you said, I think that Apple has really pushed the boundaries on environmentals and supplier, and I think that, in retail, there's 63,000 of our team members that are, touching and teaching and helping community, society every day, and I know the impact that we make. I know we're turning that up now. I mean, we're quadrupling the number of sessions and things that we're going to be teaching and focusing them. And I know we will have a terrific impact. And so it would be wonderful at some point to be able to put that out there and to try and lead the way in that space. But I think it's why we're all here at this conference. I think that's.
It's interesting too, because what you're talking about, I'm seeing a lot now of companies saying we've really got to work with our local communities. And that often means something small, something very local, but sort of typically of Apple, you've gone for something at scale and something ambitious and something with a big sense of drama about it. You're pulling people into the community in order to respond to the fact that people want to be somewhere where the action is, where human connectivity is, and so forth. And you're answering a problem from the core of the business as you do it. Do you think that that's a responsibility of leading companies? I've heard you say big company, big responsibility. How do you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't join Apple to just open stores, and I told the team that, my ego didn't need to work for a big company. My ego didn't need to, and when I started, I said big isn't good unless big does good, and so that's kind of been the journey that we've been on the last 3 years. Everything we've done has led up to everything that we're launching now, and everything was centered around. We always talk about the customer, we talk about our employee, and we actually just switch that up a bit. Our employees are the community. They live and work there.
Yes.
And very early on, I partnered with a guy that I had worked a little bit with in London, Gary Hamill, and he wrote an incredible book years ago called What Matters Now. So we brought Gary in, and we actually crowdsourced with all 63,000 people at that point, because we had a day job. We were moving pretty fast and working with fosters and thinking about a lot of things. But then I actually wanted to hear what every one of our team members in the community thought we should focus on as well. So he was over here crowdsourcing with every one of them, thousands of ideas coming in from around the stores, and then all of his his analytical team would come back and get it down to 463 and then get it down to. And so just to make sure that as we were working here, they were working here. So the cool thing is we've launched this, they are the community. They live and work in their community, and they've been a huge voice in what we're doing. So now as we're launching this, they can also see their vision come to life. And I call it social leadership, because it is you can't do any of this in a vacuum anymore. You can't, they know what we need to do, and they want to do it. I mean, and it's funny, because since we started doing this a couple years ago, the retention rates have just skyrocketed. We're at 82% retention rate in retail, which is like 4 times what, any other retailer is.
And so there's a sort of feeling that it's meaningful to them to be part of this thing. And it's interesting because everybody who has Apple products and services, we know people love the products and services. But what I had felt listening to you and working alongside you and the team is that it seems to really matter to the people in the company that success means that the outside world feels that you're playing a role in society that they respect, and that that's actually core to the values of the company in action. Do you think that that is what leads to meaningful work? Because the theme really of this whole event is meaning in life, conversation shot through with what meaning is to you. Do you think meaningful work framed in this way is part of what makes for a meaningful life for you?
Yeah, for me, yes, but I think even more for Apple. I think that my favorite quote that Steve said over and over was that it was technology, when married with liberal arts, when married with humanities, right? That's what makes our hearts sing. And so all I've been trying to do, I, like everyone in the world, probably just admired and respected him, and he had that vision from the beginning. And so how does retail live up to that vision? And then Tim, the values that he has carried on in the company, and those values just permeate all the way down to everyone on the, everyone down, to our employees in the stores. And so, Tim talks about be the ripple. Steve talked about enriching lives, changing lives, and Tim has just carried that on. And I felt so honored to come in and to be able to, to use this incredible retail platform and just help propel those visions forward.
It's been a great pleasure to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you very, very much for being in conversation with me, and I hope that everybody else here has been as inspired as I have. Take care.